Hello, hello, and welcome everybody to Let's Talk Relationship. That's right. Welcome to Friday's conversation here with myself, Stefania Pulio from the Gentleman Square. And I have a wonderful guest coming to join us today, Dr. Monica Reed. Yes, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. And before we start, and also our conversation topic. Our conversation today is going to be about defining infidelity. That's right. What is infidelity? And, have we been caught up in it, or have we been in a relationship where there has been some form of infidelity? But before we go on about the topic, I'm going to do a little brief introduction about Monica and then have her join us on the show. So, Dr. Monica Reed was born to impact the nation. Okay, she's an amazing woman, and she is a spokeswoman, I should say, for many categories. But along with that, she is an 8-time number one bestseller author, a transformational speaker, relationship consultant, and a serious serial business owner. Okay, so Monica is from originally New Jersey, but lives in Atlanta, Georgia. She's a wife, she's a mother, she's a friend, she's devoted at what she does, and her unique life experiences led her back right to this passion. And the passion is also relationships and marital, helping people in relationships, in marriages. And by sharing her own story, her own marital journey and story, she's published books, and she has a story to tell. So before I go on anymore, I'm going to introduce the lovely Dr. Monica Reed. Hello, hello.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me here today on this conversation that we've been talking about for a while, haven't we? And we've managed to
Yes.
actually catch up with defining infidelity. And I'm going to put these caption chats on to see if anyone is going to say hello. Wherever you're from, please hashtag live or replay and let us know where you're from. And please join in the conversation, typing in some questions or anything like that. But infidelity, Monica, what is
Such a hot
infidelity?
topic.
What's that?
Such a hot topic.
It is a hot topic, isn't it? And, it's either spoken about or it's all kept hush hush, isn't it? It's like either one way or the other. But, what is infidelity? And I thought I'd give my own little definition. And of course, everyone has a different definition of infidelity. But according to, Google, what is infidelity or cheating? Okay. Is it an act of being unfaithful to a spouse or a partner? It typically means that, one party of the relationship is engaging in sexual or romantic relations with another person other than the significant other, breaking a commitment. Now, as we know, there's all different types of infidelity. Most people think it's the physical one. But of course, we're not just going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about the array of them, right, Monica?
Yes, absolutely. We want to talk about all types of infidelity, at least touch on a few of them. Absolutely.
So tell us, you have had such an amazing journey yourself. I know you've written books, and congratulations on your bestsellers. We'll
Thank
talk about those later as to how people can get them. But yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself and how it all started, and and then we're going to move on to infidelity. So just give us a little intro, and then as to why we're going to be talking about this, obviously.
Absolutely. So, as you mentioned, I mean, you've read my bio, so I've been doing a lot of things. What I love about the bio overall, if you've been listening to the full bio. It has a lot to do with relationships. Everything for me is relationship based. All of my businesses, all organizations, coaching programs, everything has been built around building stronger relationships in the family, any family dynamic. So yes, unfortunately, but fortunately, when I began my journey, it really was around me sharing my story. I published my story inside of a book that was called Renew Your Marriage. And Renew stood for Remove Everything Negative, Everyone Wins Within. And in the book, people could not believe that I was talking about infidelity inside of my marriage, because a lot of times from the outside looking in, we had it all together and no one knew what we were dealing with. But infidelity was a major part of our relationship. And the reason I'm really passionate about talking about infidelity is because there's so many things that come from that one word or act, and there's so many different layers behind it. So a lot of times when I open up speaking engagements, I say, hey, I've experienced infidelity over 19 times. 19 times.
Wow.
And I took it upon myself prior to writing the book. So prior to writing the book, there was a journey that I had to go through, right? Because obviously if I'm writing this book, there's a journey that happens in order for me to get to how to do or how to process or how I overcame. So yes, I took time to write down a list of all the times that I have been involved or have faced some type of infidelity challenge. So 19 times. I always talk about that. And sometimes it blows people away when I say that. It's like, girl, you've experienced it 19 times. Yes. And the reason why I'm very open about that is because a lot of people don't realize that they have experienced it just as many times, right? If not more. And the reason that I say that is because a lot of times, as you mentioned before, we focus on the physical touch. Did a spouse cheat? Did they sleep with someone? Did they, step out and all those different things? And we totally have our blinders on when it comes to the different types of infidelity. So there's, we'll get into the different types, but yes, that was my journey. I had to really sit down and be like, holy crap, there's something wrong here. Like, it doesn't matter if it was this type or that type, it happened, right? It happened. And from there, I was determined to figure out why. For one, I was allowing this to happen. For two, why was I engaging in it? Because in the book, I also admit to infidelity, right? So a lot of people are like, wow, it took a lot of courage to talk about that. But I'm very, very transparent in my journey.
Wonderful, wonderful. Wow, that's great. And that's really great for people listening in too, because as I said before, it's a topic that sometimes we feel guilty and shame about talking about it. So let's go over these 19 and the defining. Let's define infidelity. What's your
So I love that you took it from the Google standpoint, right? Because the first time that they talk, when they start, defining it, it's like being unfaithful, right? And again, our mind goes to physical. It goes to all those direct physical views. So yeah, it's really just the act of being unfaithful to a spouse or a sexual partner, right? Especially when you've already made that commitment that it will only be you two and all those different things. So yes, the actual act outside of each other will be considered unfaithful, which is technically infidelity, right? Yeah, so once that commitment is made, rather it be we're in a relationship or, hey, we've actually, committed to each other through marriage.
So it's kind of stepping out of that commitment, right?
Exactly, stepping out from the commitment. Absolutely.
Right. So the different types, let's go over some different types that you spoke about. And obviously, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your story of 19 times. And I'm sure the audience wants to hear
I was like, okay, 19 times, this is ridiculous. And it was a little mind blowing to me too. And of course, anytime that you are come to a point where you have to examine it, I obviously was going through it at that time. So at that time was like the latest moment at that time that I was like, this is insane. My husband had stepped out, and he did not step out in the physical. It was through communication,
Mhm.
with the attempt to lead to a physical, encounter. However, I found this out. And at that point, we were at a point in our relationship. I'm like, this is too much, right? Like, why are we back here again? So, as you hear me say again, right? But at this point, I'm like, something has to change, because at this particular point in our relationship, I knew that if I walked away or he walked away, there was no repairing at this point, because there were so many of these different incidents that just led to this one breaking point for me, that caused me to pull out the the good old teacher pen and paper and write this list down of all these different times that I felt betrayed, right?
Yeah.
But the shocker to it was I also was a contributor. And so there was only but so much. Yes, I had to face what I was going through, but I also had to be honest about my part, if that makes any sense, right?
Yeah.
Um, so some of the things, and let's talk a little bit about, I guess we can go into a little bit of the different types of infidelity first,
Absolutely. Yeah. That's what I really wanted.
and then
So
I'll
that,
talk about some of
as
the
we said,
things.
everybody has a different definition. And if anyone's listening out there, please type in what your definition is. And I think it's all very personal. Don't you agree? Like,
Yes,
there's no rule really. Like, let's be honest here. There's no,
no,
this is the law, or this is what is, and it's written in concrete. Um,
exactly.
I'm not saying that it's right, I'm not saying it's wrong either. It
Mm-mm,
just is what it is, and how we can get caught up in it, and how it can, I guess,
mhm,
destroy a relationship or rebuild a relationship. Doesn't only have to be
mhm,
destructive, because it can actually bring people together. And as you said, it always takes two people to tango, right? You need two hands to clap. You can't clap
mhm,
with one
absolutely.
hand. So yeah, wherever there's an action, there's a reaction, isn't there? So yeah, please go on.
Absolutely. Yeah, so of course we know about the obvious, the direct physical touch, right? And then that's the first one, and then there's another one which is indirect, with the intention to be unfaithful, which I mentioned before.
Mhm.
Third, which is really very, 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 I don't want to use the term popular, but very common now, which is online and virtual,
Mhm.
right? Um, a lot of people don't think that just because you're online and you're having innocent conversation that that's infidelity, but it obviously is, right? One that blew my mind when I was going through what I was going through, that a lot of people miss, is financial infidelity. And there's so many secrets behind money, if you have that playing inside of your relationship. Um, and there was another one that I wanted to bring up, but those are just a few, right? The physical touch, the hello, and talking about the direct, the indirect, your online infidelity, and definitely financial infidelity as well, right? So those are just a few. There's a whole lot more, but again, it's really um, uh, really a personal thing, really, right? Because if you have a commitment with somebody
Mhm.
and you've talked about things that you disapprove of, or there may be things that are not on that list, right?
Right.
That you've already come to an agreement that you disapprove about. So if the one spouse or one partner happens to commit that particular act, or I mean, it's infidelity, right? It's a part of being unfaithful.
Yes.
So yeah, those are just a few.
Yeah,
And
I just wanted
again,
to. Yes.
emotional, yes. We talked
Emotional.
about,
Yeah,
yep,
I just want to say
emotional.
hello, Zanetta. Thank you. She's also saying emotional infidelity. Absolutely. Does that
Yeah,
relate to that, right?
absolutely. Absolutely. So, yeah, those are just a few that kind of came to mind. And for me, during that moment, I really wanted to dump everything out. Like, what have you been through? What does that look like? Um, and again, I'm always very transparent. This was an act on his part as well as mine,
Mhm.
right? And over in this particular list, I don't want anybody to think like, oh, you got together and all these things started happening, but we've been together for an expansion of 27 years.
I was just going to
So,
say, let's go over the history of your marriage and relationship as well, so people get a
mhm,
better picture as to, because most people out there, I'm sure, are saying 19 times. I would have
mhm,
like, that's it. Like, how can you keep going? But how much more are you going to keep going? Is it a game? Is it, you know what I'm saying? Like, so just share a
mhm,
little bit about your story, Monica, so that way
absolutely.
people have a better idea.
And I want to also, Keith, I'm going to share my story, but I also want to also bring out um, some of the things that were taught, because we met so young. So my husband and I actually met when we were very, very young, right? I was 14, he was around 17, and we became friends for a really long time, probably about 3-4 years before we actually started dating. It was really like the puppy love in between, but we took really time to become friends first. And so it was a beautiful thing in the beginning. And we were so young. It's like that puppy love, right? So all you're really focused on is being close to each other. However, there still were red flags in the beginning, right? Because even though you're young, it's really your first opportunity to show commitment, right? To show that you're really loyal to this person. So we had red flags then, but then we still continued on and ignored the red flags, still decided to get together and, raise a family, have children, raise a family, and get together. We did not get married until about 9-10 years into our relationship from day one, which someone would think that, okay, you had 9-10 years to get it all together. And then we got married, probably, like I said, 10 years in. And I bel I noticed a lot of different things in up until that point, but again, I guess chose to ignore them, or sometimes because you're so in love, you tend to overlook
Hmm.
certain signs. It's just a lot. It's like layers of things, and then we got
So just,
married,
so
and
just,
then.
sorry, Monica, just
Mhm.
share what were the signs, just so we kind of like, what signs were you alarmed by?
Absolutely. So, first of all, us women and everyone, I believe the intuition is part of everyone. We all have an intuition, right? Um, I had a lot of intuition, especially if you see things that are like if a person is flirtatious, whether it's me or him, flirtatious with people that come around, or if you're accepting phone calls from certain individuals and allowing the conversation to be more than just a quick second. You're allowing the emotions to come in. You have the transfer of emotions. You're meeting each other's needs. Um, there were signs, of course, when you start having children, and that's a big one. When you start having children and children come into the relationship, one particular parent, usually the mother, has spending a lot of time in raising these children, and the man fills a void. So there was so many different things that came up in those first few years, especially, having children so young into the relationship. There were a lot of signs. So phone calls, um, there were weekends, right, where one particular person would be out of the house, and unexplainable time that was missing. There was just a lot of different signs,
Hmm.
and for the both of us, we totally just decided to look the other way. Of course, we would address some of them, but at the same time, nothing was ever to the point where we decided, you know what, this is enough, we're going to split, or we need to deal with this, or talk about it.
Hmm.
So there were a lot of different signs. Also, 10 years after dating, our focus really was, are we going to be together? Are you going to get married? Are we going to make this official? Right? And some people go through premarital counseling and some people don't. We chose not to. I believe that had we did that at that particular point, a lot of things would have been different. A lot of things would have been different because we would have been forced to recognize or to deal with the signs that we already saw.
Right.
Right. Looking back now, right, 27 years, you learn so much. So we went on, we got married, and unfortunately, infidelity hit our home the very same weekend that we got married, 48 hours into it. And it was huge. It was huge. However, again, had we took time to address it, I don't believe that that would have happened, but it did. So it was a major, because, and I don't know why, and I want to address this point too. Sometimes people feel like if you're experiencing infidelity in the dating world, that when you get married, things will change. And I really want, I really, really, really
yeah,
want to address
change,
that.
right? It doesn't change. That's what you're saying. It doesn't change.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't change. A lot of people feel like, oh, I walked down the aisle, I have his last name. And the other one, the other myth is that children would bring you closer.
I was gonna say,
And that children would bring you closer. And they're both total BS, if I can say that, right? But it's not true. It's not true at all. So I don't want women to think or men to think that it's just an emotion for the moment that is drawing you closer and having this connection. But when all the stars and and all the glitz and glam and all those things are gone, you're back to reality. And the reality is that it still exists. The behavior still exists.
I just have a quick comment here by Zanetta. What does she say? Do we see or know the signs but excuse it anyway? As to why we kind of brush it off, she says, or don't address it. Right, very valid point.
Very, very valid point. So to the first question, absolutely. I do believe that we do see signs and we excuse it. I also believe that we brush it off because we're not really ready to face reality. And sometimes when you're facing reality, you may not have the end result, the beautiful ending like you were anticipating. So sometimes it's out of embarrassment. Sometimes it's out of the willing that we can push through, the willingness that we can get through this. And then again, it's the lieu of thinking that things would change once you actually commit to each other. But yeah, we definitely make excuses. And I believe that's just because we're not ready to face the reality.
A lot of fear around that, really, isn't it? It's just
a lot of fear. And if I could be really transparent, because of our relationship and our story, and this may be different for anyone else, or some people can probably relate. For me, we met so young and moved into things so fast. I've never, the fear was being alone. And a lot of people fear, being alone, but especially being alone, seeing these signs, being alone and being a mom and, all these different things. It's like, holy crap, how do, not right now. So your mind keeps telling you just to prolong things, right? And that's part of that overlooking.
Yes. Yes, yes, definitely. So, yeah. So, okay. So when you say, we said two parties, takes two to tango, two hands to clap. When do you think on your own review of your own life where maybe you contributed to that as well? Like, because, I often say, if that's happening in your marriage or your relationship, it may be too because it's something in that person that's reflecting back to you, or there's something that person may want more of and seeking it outside the relationship. Do you know what I mean? Like sometimes you hear many stories. I've helped a lot of men where they have felt that particularly after having children, for example, there's not a lot of intimacy and not a lot of physical intimacy because, men really are drawn to that. Not all, but, there's a big element around that. And they feel they have to seek for it elsewhere, but yet can come back into the marriage or the relationship and say, well, you're still my partner, you're still my wife, you're still my spouse, and that it's okay. Do you know what I'm saying? So where do you think in your area, do you think that you could have possibly?
So I can only really speak for me, right? And in all transparency, it really was a lot. And I believe that it was Annetta who commented about the emotional infidelity. And for myself, a lot of times it was, right? It was the emotional connection to another person. And a lot of times that happens because there's so much stress that's in the home, and you're just dealing with so much with this particular individual. And again, it does not make it right. However, I can definitely see and know firsthand that for myself, it was an emotional attachment, right? It really had nothing to do with the physical. Now, for everybody else, it may be different, right? For men, it may be different, especially after a woman has a baby. However, I also believe that if that is the case, that it's also not only the emotional, but the physical as well, because men need emotions, their emotions met as too.
Absolutely.
So as women, we're so busy. We're just like, I got the kids, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. We really don't take the time to stop and hear, right? Because we're focused. So I think also for men, I don't want to speak for men, but I believe that it's an emotional plus a physical attachment. For women, it could be both. But I know for a lot of us, we are emotional creatures. So, and more, for myself, it was emotional.
And it can be the other way around, where women are also seeking physical, the physical, because maybe there may be, a change in life for the man, or there may be an issue, there may be some dysfunction, stress, stress brings along a lot of also change in relationship intimacy. So definitely. So moving along with your journey. So you got to what age, and then you kind of reevaluated? Did you sort of like got to that stage where you nearly parted? What was communication like?
Horrible. It was horrible. Yes, we actually got to a point in our relationship where nothing was really working as far as trying to understand. I think the communication was off because you're so busy trying to understand how and why did you get to this point, right? However, it was horrible in the beginning until we actually sat down to talk about why we felt we were at this point, right? And that is why I decided to write the book at the time, because unless two people are willing to be very transparent and be willing to hear things that they don't believe that they were ready to hear, it would never work. So you have to get to a place, and I can only tell you from experience from the first time, you have to get to a place where you're able to be as vulnerable and transparent as possible, because anything else is just like committing the act, right? So you have to get to a place where if a spouse is saying, I'm not attracted to you, or I'm not feeling this way, or I'm falling out of love with you, you have to it takes tough skin to hear that, right? So you have to get yourself to a place where you're able to be that transparent in order to understand why it took place. And then after that, then it's decision time. What do I do now that I know, now that I have this information? What do I do with it? Do I stay? Do I go? Am I willing to work through? And also be very transparent about that, because in repairing, and I can only speak to, again, my journey, in repairing your relationship after infidelity, it takes a total mental, it takes a toll on your mental health, because you're fighting to keep something alive. So I want everyone to understand that you have to be very transparent about the work that you're willing to put in order to stay with this person after infidelity. It's a serious journey.
Yeah. And would you say
It's not
too,
just one of those things. That,
yeah,
oh, you did it. I forgive you. We want to move on. No, you cannot do that.
no, no. And I think too, I'd have to add to that, there definitely you need some sort of counseling or therapy afterwards, because you just can't, like
Mhm.
you said, think, oh, everything's okay, sweep it under the carpet and it's over and done with,
Mhm.
because it's going to resurface. And you see, a lot of the
Absolutely.
time it does, because
Mhm.
it'll come up, and that will be thrown back into your face, whether you're
Absolutely.
the receiver or the giver. And I
Mhm.
must say, I had, yeah, I had an experience like that, where I was in a relationship and I was cheated on. And for me, it was just really hard. I couldn't let go of it. I really couldn't let go of it. And I
Mhm.
did find myself rehashing it and throwing it back in his face. It's like, it just says something like, I can't, like, and I was sacrificing myself and him
Mhm.
and the relationship together. Till then,
Mhm.
I made that decision, said, "No, this has got to end, because this is it's not healthy." It was I was creating more toxicity in the relationship, and I know he was really trying, but I think I had to deal with a lot of that and letting go. But yeah, it's so important, because you can't have that resurface and
Mhm.
rehashing it and throwing it back at that person. It doesn't work.
Yeah. And I think every relationship is different. So, for myself, because both of us had experience or had committed some type of level of infidelity for me, and it sounds like yours was a little bit different. But for me, it really took a lot
Mm,
to say, okay, you cannot expect someone else to forgive you if you can't learn to forgive yourself,
mm,
or for your own actions as well. So I think for me, I was looking for just as much as forgiveness that I was trying to find to get forgive him as well.
mm,
And so it didn't make it any better, right? It didn't
no,
make it any better. um but that was our journey, right? And for me, I also wanted to go back to address all the things that I didn't know, right? So when I talk about the infidelity, the financial infidelity, things such as, buying things without consulting with your partner, or moving money or hiding money or starting other bank accounts, all those different things.
mm,
Um, that's all financial infidelity. So I'm like, where did all this come from? So to my next point, a lot of it is learned behavior, right? The things that we see, the things that we're taught, and we may see our parents do, or we may see our friends do, and all these different things. So a lot of it is learned behavior. However, everyone still has a choice, so it's not an excuse,
mm,
right? Everyone still has an excuse, but I really want people to understand that, because I think in certain environments, you're celebrated for having multiple women or multiple men, and it's like highlighted, and you don't realize how much damage is really being done.
mm. Even in open relationships, I've worked with people where couples, not so much couples, but men that have come, and the agreement between the couple has been an open relationship, and it's all very fine in agreeing. But then when it really comes to um, what they say, push comes to shove, they can't handle it, either party.
Yeah.
Or can I share this too, where I've had, I've heard of situations, experiences where they want to experience someone else coming to their relationship. So have a threesome.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
and usually, believe it or not, women really like this. It's not so much the men. A lot of the stories, if I have to take a survey, I guess, percentage wise, it'd be more the women wanting to
Mhm.
experience third party with another woman and their
Mhm.
spouse, right? And
Mhm.
that has been like destructive. I mean, I can't begin to tell you how many relationships it's actually destroyed, because
Absolutely.
they've wanted to experience that. Again, you've got to be ready for the um, the consequences of what
Mhm.
could be afterwards. So I think you've got to be very mature about that. So yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. And I love that you brought that up as well, because even though that wasn't my story, I do understand that yes, there can be a lot of agreement in the beginning, right?
Mhm.
But depending on what happens afterwards, and you don't expect, again, there has to be some type of um, agreement, right? Agreement, which we talked about in the beginning, because infidelity then takes place after you break the agreement. Right. So in that case, it's like, okay, we agreed to do this.
Right.
However, I didn't agree to the second part, right?
Exactly.
Or I
Yeah.
didn't agree for you to, emotionally attached to this person, all those different things. So we have to be very mature and also very, very direct and clear on the expectations after that act.
Yeah.
So
And I think
my relationship was way too fragile for stuff like that. So
And I'd have to say, go a little further. If that's an agreement, I think it'd have to be a written agreement, really. Like, because
I would say so too. Like, I'm a writer. We got to put some things in writing. Like,
right, because you can change. Well, I thought you said this. Well, I thought you meant this by this, or or I didn't say
exactly.
that. I didn't mean that. Oh
Yeah,
my.
so it's one big hot mess. However, I do, and this is just me and my personal opinion, right? And a lot of people will be shocked that I say this, but I mean, I understand it. I definitely understand the open relationship and all those other agreements, right? Even though that wasn't my story, I definitely understand it. Only because of the emotion and the mental stresses, and I don't know. It's just you always looking for an outlet, So I definitely understand it. I have no opinion on it, but definitely get it in writing. Get it in writing.
Yeah, because it's a big step. It's a big
It
agreement.
is.
It's a bit of a I guess like a financial agreement or some sort. I don't know. It's quite big. Yeah. So okay. So 19. How you've been married? So you've been together 27 years. Is that right?
So together 27 years, married for 17.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, married for 17. So yeah, a lot. And that's why I brought up the fact that a lot of this took place. Um, yes,
Yeah.
yes, I think there was a
Zanetta's
comment.
just commenting here. Sorry, this is quite good. Even if there's an agreement, we're humans and we are creatures of possession. Yes. How true is that? Especially
Yes.
married or some kind of relationship, partnership, your mother.
Yeah, like yes, we are definitely creatures of possession. It's like, no, that belongs to me, and that type of thing. But and we are all human, right? So I really don't know what to say about that. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, then don't need to really
that's
say
right.
anything. Zanetta's just
Yeah.
sharing. But I think too, you know, as I said before, there's no right or wrong. I mean, who are we to judge,
Mm-mm.
right? We can't judge because only God can judge. And this is something
Absolutely.
I really wanted to bring in as well. I guess a moral, a God view. What, because for some it's like taboo, right? But yet for
Hmm.
others, whether it be culture, religion, or their social environment, it is acceptable. I think.
Hmm.
What would you say about that? Like, what would define that? Is it just totally personal? Like,
Um, are you saying from a religious or a spiritual
a spirit?
perspective?
Yeah, yeah.
We are, of course, we all know that infidelity is definitely, sinful in, the Bible, and we talk about things like that. Um, I really just believe that it is a personal thing. It really is. It's just really, where you are, and who you are, what type of consequences you're willing to take. And there's some people that are like, okay, I committed this act and now I'm just gonna go repent. Like I really don't know how to speak to that, but I do know that it's truly a personal walk.
Mm.
And it's something that everyone has to deal with on their own, right? It's for me, and I'll be very transparent. At that time, I wasn't as spiritual as I am now. Um, so for me, it was more of like, do you forgive me? Do I not forgive myself? All that type of things. And now it's just like, when I started to get more into my spiritual walk, it was like, oh my God, I feel convicted, right? Like it's, it's just different. It's different levels.
But
Levels to it.
I think too, we can look at it from a different perspective, because,
Mhm.
I guess an opportunity, something has come up, and maybe God's allowed you to go down that path as well, where you have grown from it. You have been
Mhm.
stretched by it. You've
Mhm.
grown spiritually as well. So
Mhm. Mhm.
not everything is really bad. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
not saying that, again, there's no right or wrong. It just is
Yeah.
what it is. But we can look at it from that perspective, that it's made us grow. It's stretched us. It's given us so much
Yes.
pain that it's, made us a better person. Because usually we do become better
Mhm.
people from these experiences, because they have been
Absolutely.
painful, right?
Absolutely. So from my, and I can again speak for myself, from my experience of dealing with something like that, I did grow. I grew in a very positive way. For me, I was able to not only see myself, right, and grow mentally, because there's a certain level of strength that you have to gain when you go through something like that. It makes you look at, like I said, makes you look at yourself, self-analyze yourself. So I'm glad that we're talking about that as well, because in my particular case, there were a lot of things that I did not deal with, right? That to what I believe led to the whole infidelity issues. A lot of it was my childhood experiences
Mm.
that I had not dealt with. And sometimes that could, lead into infidelity. So sometimes there are people that are looking and seeking approval or looking to be loved in a certain way because they didn't have certain things as a child. So again, it was an act out of a void that they were looking for. So sometimes it has nothing to do with that the spouse. So I also want to bring that up too, right?
Mhm.
But I know for me, I had a lot of growth, especially when I had to go back and examine myself.
Mm. Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
I've just got some little messages here from Zanetta. What did she say here? Contracts don't work, not even an open relationship. Mm.
Mm.
We also are competitive and compare ourselves with the other individual who the partner cheated with. Oh,
Oh,
yes.
oh yeah.
All the time. All the time.
Oh my
No matter
God.
a woman or
That's
a man,
very,
right?
very true.
And I believe we are faced with things that we have to grow from within. Yeah, that's exactly what we're saying, right? And
Mhm.
that's that
That
is
wasn't me.
that wasn't me. She says. Okay, yeah, okay. Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely. There is got to, there's growth out of it. There are positives. I think nothing happens just by chance. And
Yeah.
uh I think when we talk about, you spoke about something very interesting, when you can't forgive the other person, and usually it's because you can't forgive yourself, right? So you really got to forgive
Mhm.
yourself first before you can forgive the other
Mhm.
person. And for me, I must say, I just want to share this little bit. I couldn't forgive myself because, you know what? I saw the signs before. That was the
Yep.
crazy part, right? Like you'd mentioned, there were signs, there were little
Mhm.
bits and pieces, and you're in denial. You just like want it to work. You just turn a blind eye to it. And the more I left it, the more it sort of got worse and worse, till, my situation was
Mhm.
really bad, where I actually found him in bed. With her. It was like, not physically. Yeah, came into the apartment, and because I was knocking on the door, and he hadn't opened yet. I could hear shuffling of feet, and I knew something was going on, because I knew. I'm just the story's great. I have to tell it one day, because it's really quite.
You have to tell it.
When I opened up, he was drunk, and he's going, "What do you want? What do you want?" And I said, and he's like alcohol coming out of his breath, and I opened the door. I said, "Where is she?" And I just ran in, and this was in Italy. So in Italy, we have like little balconies on the apartments with, those, they're called serrandi in Italian, those shutters, and it was like closed to about 3/4. So she must have slid underneath, and I could see her feet on the balcony. I could see her feet. So I knew that, she was running, she was hiding, and and it ended there, where I just went, what am I doing? Like, I just caught myself, because I was going to go to the shutter and open it, like, and strangle her. But then he just grabbed me, flung me on the bed, and I went, oh my God, what am I doing? So I just left. I just like, no, this is not going to happen. You are not going to draw me into this. But I was angry. I was angry with myself. And I think too, at the time, I was not able to forgive him as a result. I have now. I can laugh about it and talk about it, whereas years ago I could not talk about it. So it's quite interesting about the forgiveness part, isn't it? And the self-forgiveness.
I love that you brought that up, because a lot of times, again, yes, you have to forgive yourself. Like, how the heck did I tolerate this or miss the signs or anything?
Zanetta's having a little laugh. Yes, Zanetta, that's exactly what happened. Trust me,
exactly.
I'm now.
Something that Zanetta mentioned, one of the comments, was about comparing yourself. Let me tell you. And I want to speak to that, because you will drive, if anyone ever finds themselves in this particular situation or dealing with infidelity, you will drive yourself crazy trying to figure out why that person, are they better than me? Do they look better? Do they smell better? Like, all those different, you will drive yourself crazy. And I know this firsthand, right? And what I've come to realize, and if you really sit back after the storm is over, it has nothing to do with you.
No.
Nothing to do with you. And the first thing that we do is we start to look at ourselves, examine ourselves. What did I do wrong? And for me, when I looked back over that list that wasn't so pretty, there was no common denominator. It wasn't like this particular type of woman, or there was nothing there, which was confirmation for me that he just wanted attention, right? It didn't matter who it came from. And, even when I look at my past, it was like, you just were seeking a certain thing inside someone. So we have to stop looking at ourselves and examine ourselves when we find ourselves in those situations, and stop trying to look for the reasoning behind. But just know that it happened, right? We try to make it make sense, like why, like, don't you see, that type of thing. But we do compare ourselves. We definitely compare ourselves to the individual.
And exactly, I just want to point out, wondering why it happened. You keep that why keeps repeating in your head. Why? Or why me? And why us? And why her? Like, I'm better than her or him. You know what I mean? Either way. So definitely. Okay, well, that's been great. So just quickly, that then drove you to write some books, obviously, and you have written. Let's share quickly your books that you have written.
So Renew Your Marriage was the first book that I ever wrote on the experience of what I've been through. And it was really about the steps that we took, the ones that I, after putting the list together, what actually happened afterwards, right? Like, what did I do? And what did I feel was necessary in order to keep the marriage together? Again, it was really being that vulnerable conversation that I talked about, being very I mean, I learned some things that I just wish I would have never learned, right? But in order to to really be transparent and to move on, I had to be a big girl and really face some of the facts, and vice versa, right? I went on to talk about in the book, how environment played a big part. Things like music, and nobody would ever think about that, right? How music and the things that we put inside of our minds and the things that we're taught, just so many different things. And
Mm.
then I talked about the other side of it. Like once you removed all these things, what are some of the things that may not have been in your relationship before that you now need to add to your relationship? One might just be that contract, right? Or it might be, another way of communicating or making sure, like whatever that may look like in your relationship dynamic. So I went on to write Renew Your Marriage. What happened was there were a lot of women who come to me to say, Monica, I'm the issue, or I have things in my past, as I mentioned earlier, and I am the issue. And when I started to really think about what I really, really, really did that made us get through that particular time was Renew You. And Renew You is the second book that I published, which really focused on me focusing on what I did to contribute to the relationship. What are some things about myself that I needed to address, from the childhood experiences to the way that I was showing up as a wife and all those different things that I had to make sure that I was doing. So I'll talk about that self-examination. So Renew You is the second book. So it's Renew Your Marriage and Renew You. They're both on Amazon. And again, I just really wanted to be transparent with everybody about what it takes if you decide that you want to make it work. You made a point earlier about sometimes doors are open for you to get out and grow, and what happens then. And I do believe that those scenarios do happen. There comes a point in time where, hey, we can't make it work, or I'd rather not make it work. So again, that's a personal choice. So I
Mm.
always tell everybody, one of the questions that I had to ask myself was, did you do everything to make this work?
Mm.
And if the answer is yes, and you still find yourself not wanting to be in the relationship, know that it's okay to walk away.
Mm. Mm.
It's okay to walk away because you gave it your all.
Yes, exactly. It's very, very personal. Absolutely. Wow, this has been quite interesting. I have one more comment here from the lovely Zanetta, who's been joining us. Do we really get angry with the partner situation, or are we really displacing, what did you call it, for projecting our anger because we already know this was going to happen? Yeah, exactly. This is the question, why me? Yes, exactly. And I must say,
Mhm.
I was a victim of that. I created that in my relationship back then, where I just didn't do anything about it. And I was angry because I could have. I could have definitely done something about it. But it's all different. And I think I just needed to go through that personally myself to
Mhm.
grow,
Mhm.
definitely to grow. Um, yeah, quite interesting. But Monica, this has been fun. This has been a great
Yes.
conversation. And I'd like
Absolutely.
to, yeah, possibly have another conversation about this and extend it in a different way. I know we kind of spoke about it, but we can do that later. So,
Mhm.
where can people find you with couples counseling? Because that's
So
something that
I'm
you
no
do.
longer doing couples counseling.
Okay.
Everything for me, I mean, we can definitely talk about relationships. I'm really focused on personal growth,
Mm,
right? Because I really, as I mentioned before, I feel like once you work on yourself and you do the work internally for yourself, you
mm,
actually have the ability to make any relationship work,
mm.
or make the clear decision that the relationship does not work.
Abs-
However, unless you do the work on yourself, you don't know what that end result is going to be.
mm,
So I've been focused really on part two, which is Renew You.
mhm,
And again, it's about examining yourself, removing everything negative. Everyone wins within. And so it's a personal walk. I'm really focused on that piece of it. And everyone can also find me on social media, anywhere on social media under Monica D. Reed, especially on Instagram, and also on Facebook under Monica Reed.
Wonderful.
So, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's great. Yeah, and it all starts with self. So loving yourself, really healing that relationship first. Because once you heal that relationship, any
Yes,
relationship's going to work. Absolutely. I couldn't agree
absolutely.
with you more. And of course,
Hmm.
do not overlook that the past has, contributing effects to our relationships, the way we behave, our behavioral patterns,
Hmm.
our mindset. And of
Hmm.
course, people out there that know, I also work with people through hypnotherapy. So
Hmm.
we're really reprogramming the subconscious
Yes,
mind. So it's wonderful.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, this was
So,
amazing. Thank you so much.
yeah, thank you. Thank you, Monica. Just one more from be honest with yourself and standing on your truth. Yes, absolutely. This truth will set you free, right? The
Yes.
truth will set you free. So I really appreciate your time, Monica. It's been fun. Thank you for sharing your story because,
Yeah.
sharing one's own personal story, it and getting vulnerable, it really is something, not everybody can do it. And I really am grateful for your, sharing your story to enlighten, inspire others out there that are listening. And of course, if you want to reach out to Monica, you can do so. We'll put some details up above this live as well. And of course, if any gentlemen out there want to connect with me, I'm actually giving away complimentary 30-minute complimentary insight calls, just to have a little chat. Let's chat. I'll put a link up there as well.
Hmm.
But Monica, is there anything you'd like to say before we leave to our audience?
No, if I could say anything, it's really pay attention to the signs of infidelity. And if you happen to go through this particular situation, know that it's okay to take as long as possible to heal from that type of situation. It's not something that just happens overnight. So really just focus on you. And as Zanetta had mentioned, just stand in your truth
Mm.
and be really honest with yourself about how you're willing to deal with that.
Absolutely. Be honest, but be gentle with that honesty, because sometimes that
That's
that
right.
honesty or that truth can be, you can come
Heavy.
from that angle of criticism, brutally honest
Hmm.
in the sense that it's critical, and we don't want that. We want to mix some love in
Absolutely.
that truth, right?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you once again, and thank you to everybody joining in. Please put a heart down here, write some comments, ask some questions. Dr. Monica Reed would be happy to answer them, I'm sure. And until next
Absolutely.
time, I send you love, we send you love, and send you passion. Bye for now.
Bye.